anybody can tell a compelling lie. I mean, I can lie and make up great stories. And we have a
Sure.
lot of politicians, a lot of leaders, a lot of people who blast out really grabby things that have little or no connection with the truth.
And I can tell you, years ago, I applied for a position, and it was internal communications at a major telecom organization. And I was talking to the vice president, and he just kind of asked me, you can do all of these things. What can't you do? And I think he maybe meant that in terms of skill set, but what I told him was the truth. I said, I can't lie. I cannot lie to an audience for you or for the company. And so if that is the kind of thing that you're going to ask of me, I don't think it's going to work out. And, I didn't get that job. And could it have been because of what I said? Absolutely. Could it have been because I talk too much? Sure. Or I'm loud? Sure. But I think it was probably because of that answer.
Ben Rosenfield is a human. I hate to state that bluntly, but he is a human. He's also a marketing and communications leader. He's a strategist, a hands-on creator. He is a thought leader. In a world where everybody frames themselves as thought leaders, Ben is a thought leader with proven expertise in audience research and customer engagement. He makes complex information clear and compelling. I know this from personal experience. He's a servant leader. He's an adaptive leader. He's a coach. He's a mentor. And I think most importantly, as I said, he's a human, a lover of haiku, a collector of teapots. And there are lots of reasons why I asked Ben to join us on this podcast, because I think he is the perfect example of the kind of person that I hope to interview on this podcast every week. So with that, Ben, I hate to, sometimes it's better to start with low expectations and build up from there. So I hope I didn't oversell you, but I would like to ask you, for an audience that maybe doesn't know you or isn't aware of you, although I'll include your LinkedIn profile, on the show notes, et cetera. Are there any gaps you would like to fill? Anything you would like to share about yourself with everybody as we get started, so they just know you a little bit better?
Sure. I think what we would distill what you shared down to is that I am someone who enjoys and is really passionate and very good at bringing audience needs, consumers, customers, members, patients, whoever it might be, bring their needs into balance with the business's objectives. So oftentimes a business will communicate with or market to or inform its audiences in the way it sees fit, when it sees fit, where and how. And that can work, but when they take the audience's perspective and they bring it into their own marketing, communications, engagement strategy, what they will find is better quality interaction with their audience, more sales, more engagement, less frustration on the consumer end, more trust, and other good things like that. So I'm very, very passionate about bringing the consumer experience into balance with business expectations and objectives.
And your business name is Dyadic Dynamics.
That's
which,
right.
I'll be honest, I had to go back and look up again, like what exactly is dyadic. I kind of knew it, but I again, I think I understand now. Dyadic dynamics is the dynamic between the two, between the consumer and the organization. If I'm getting that right, or do I have?
You are. Right? You're getting it exactly right, Dan. And it's ironic that I picked that business name, given that I am very, very, very in favor of plain language communication. And so the sort of the inside joke for me, and the irony that some might appreciate, is that it's sort of a jargony or technical sounding name. And really the discipline that I have developed and evolved over more than 20 years of professional experience is exactly that: making interactions, communications, campaigns, content a one-to-one scenario, a dyad, a two-party interaction or transaction. And the dynamics, those are the changes that happen. So we're very focused on the changes that happen when two parties get together and start to communicate. And so in real time, we are able to bring data and insights from the audience into the business's strategy, again, bringing them into balance so that everyone wins. That's a very human outcome.
So I was asking myself why I was so excited about this interview. I'm excited about all the interviews, and I would hate to say there are, some that I'm more excited about than others. Of course, every guest is a valued guest, but there was something in particular that was compelling me to have this interview. And I think where it starts, we have to kind of go back to the animating premise for this podcast, which is that our world is changing so rapidly. And I know that's almost a cliche, but I know many leaders are struggling to navigate a business environment that's being disrupted by generative AI, social upheaval, economic uncertainty, income disparity, generational conflict, cultural conflict, remote hybrid work environments, globalization, information overload, misinformation overload, the increasing speed and complexity of business. And it's so much, and it has evolved this to be this over the last 5 to 10 years. It's almost like the classic, frog in the boiling pan. You turn up the heat up slowly, and the frog doesn't realize that it's boiling now. And I think we have many leaders whose water is boiling, and they're wondering, is it me? Is it what is it? Why do I feel so agitated? Why do I feel kind of discombobulated? Why do I feel uncertain? Why do I have anxiety? And why do my people have anxiety? Like what's up? And I don't mean to put on this on your shoulders. I'm not saying, hey, Ben has all of the answers. No, that's not the point. The point is that these podcast interviews are a search for the answers. They're a discussion about the issues, and my hope would be eventually lead us to something very discerning, like maybe not necessarily a new leadership model, but something that says, okay, here are lots of ideas about a way to be in today's world, and as a leader, a way to be more effective. And so I think that is kind of my way of saying, I think Ben Rosenfield as a human, as somebody who is unique, as somebody on LinkedIn. You have thousands of LinkedIn connections. I have thousands of LinkedIn connections. So at some point, I locked into you. I said, there's someone that I want to know better. There's somebody that has something going on. And so I think that's going to become more and more important as leaders, that we each have something that locks into other people. I don't know. Does that prompt any thoughts from you?
Absolutely. I think one of the issues that's at the root of this, and I think one of the reasons that this particular issue causes some of the feelings, the anxieties, the fear, the uncertainty that you just mentioned a moment ago, it's the emphasis on short-term gain versus long-term value. And some companies, that is what they prioritize, and that's their strategy, that's their decision, and that's fine for them. However, the short-term gain strategy often leads to problems with capacity, problems with employee recognition, things that make people feel good about logging in and good about producing the work that the organization is counting on them to produce at the end of the day. And that's something that starts at the very, very top. Excuse me. When you have shareholders to take care of and shareholder value to monitor as a CEO or another C-suite leader, it can be easy to get pulled into the short-term gain, the quick wins type of mentality. And there's nothing wrong with incremental gain and incremental improvement, but not at the expense of the long-term value of the people in that organization. And so when we think about short-term gain instead of long-term value, we start using words to describe people in the workplace like resources. People are not resources. Computers are, calculators are, paper clips are, the photocopier is. We start to hear a lot of corporate jargon, a lot of corporate shortcuts to help us speed up our day, circle back and touch base and leverage synergies. And that's one of the reasons why the the now famous and universally adored corporate haiku project came to be is that there's so much of this crazy talk and behavior baked into corporate culture now that human beings need an outlet that's safe. And so when people join, they follow the page on LinkedIn, they contribute a haiku of their own, they're letting off steam. No, they're not naming their employer or any individual at work, and they're not making fun of anything or anyone in particular. They're just making fun of some of the things that they encounter during the day that they would never encounter outside of work. So the short-term gain philosophy should be just that. Did we get the gain we wanted in the short term? Yes. Now let's flip over to a more medium, long-term view, and let's take stock of our people. How are they feeling? How's the quality of their work? What's the morale look like? And so the more you stretch people's capacity, their bandwidth with short-term wins, short-term gain, the less able they are to build self-awareness, self-efficacy, in other words, the ability to deal with a particular situation successfully on their own without asking someone, a manager, a colleague, for help. I see a lot of detrimental impact of the short-term gain mentality. So I think that's one of the roots of the issue, and there are plenty more we can talk about.
I would encourage everyone to go to LinkedIn, do a search for the Corporate Haiku Project, read through many of the submissions, and if you feel moved to create a submission of your own, it's a great exercise. I love the discipline of the haiku structure, but I also love how you in assessing various haiku submissions, you're not too judgy about it, and it's a good exercise. I would love to see a Venn diagram that says that combines in one circle the haiku project contributors, and then another fans of The Office, and to see what the overlap is, because it's kind of like a fancy and intellectually fancy way to express the same kind of humor that you oftentimes saw in episodes of The Office. But
it absolutely is.
Yeah.
I think that what's funny is it was born from a LinkedIn post very close to The Office, Severance. And a marketing agency that provided services for Apple to help promote the Severance series, they identified some creators in the LinkedIn population that follows them. And they reached out to me one day and said, hey, we'd like to include you in this little thing that we're doing. So on Valentine's Day, a little gift appears from Lumen Industries, the company that's in Severance, the fictional company in Severance. And it's full of Valentine's Day treats and things like that, a note for me and everything. And so I took a picture of it and I posted it on LinkedIn with a witty comment that tied back to the show. And the agency ended up sharing it and posting about it and replying to it. And there are tens of thousands, if not 100,000 plus followers on the Lumen Corporation LinkedIn page that this agency created, which is a brilliant move to do it on LinkedIn. And overnight, it went viral. I woke up the next morning, went to LinkedIn, and I saw more notification badges than I've ever seen in my life. Most of the connections I made on LinkedIn through that Severance interaction have been the best quality, most persistent one-on-one relationships that I've had, including ours. I do believe that's how we found each other.
I think you're right. Now that you're saying it, that was the original connection, and it definitely grabbed me. Now the Severance series, I think I probably watched the first 2 episodes because I just needed something to watch. It was just like it was like filler. But by the 3rd or 4th episode, it had grabbed me. It was like, okay, now I get this premise, and it's kind of a thought-provoking premise with it's somewhat like The Office, but with more of a dark side. Like, if The Office had an evil twin, that could certainly be Severance. So very, very cool. So then if we think about this modern work environment, and I know part of what I like about your background is you've had real jobs. I mean, you are a real worker. You are in the real world. And I think I said this to you before when we spoke. I get a little impatient with gurus. I get a little impatient with the pontificators who basically they make their living telling other people what they think. Not that isn't of course, it's a viable living, but I like working with leaders who have worked in the real world with real jobs and real people and real challenges, and they've overcome real things and they've done real things. And that's absolutely you. Could you tell us a little bit about, I guess, your background and what has formed you into the Ben Rosenfield that you are today?
I have always been really excited about communicating with people. And I was fortunate to grow up in a household where both my parents were educators of one type or another. And so I was raised in an environment where learning was valuable, where helping other people attain and use knowledge and information was valuable. And those were the things that were noble in my upbringing. Those were good things to do. And I didn't necessarily want to be a teacher, but I found through journalism that I could tell a truthful story that could help people understand what's going on around them. When I went into business to business publishing, I ended up leading 3 different magazine titles, each focusing on a different subject, but each one designed to improve, enhance the way people did their work. One was for printing garments and graphics. One was for consumer packaged goods, and one was for futuristic manufacturing, we'll call it. Back then, in the early 2000s, 3D printing, additive manufacturing, and each one of those titles helped people do their jobs more effectively, helped the leadership make better or more high quality decisions in the workplace. And so that was really gratifying. And when I saw the market start to change, and I'm in Cincinnati, Ohio, and we've got a healthy media landscape here, but it is not a New York or a San Francisco or a Chicago. And when I saw the local opportunities in traditional journalism start to wane a little bit, I stepped back and I said, I'm already doing these blogs. I'm writing emails that we're sending out to thousands of people, and we're on social media. And again, this is 2008, 2009. I was doing digital marketing and didn't really know it, didn't really think about it.
Mhm.
And so I moved from publishing into a company, a national organization that develops and manufactures home improvement solutions, windows, doors, sunrooms, things like that, and did digital marketing and public relations for them, set up a content marketing hub with them, and did all kinds of stuff that I never thought I'd be doing. And of course, my next step went into financial services, in particular life insurance, which is a heavily regulated industry. And I had the really good fortune of working in sort of a boutique brand, if you will, under the parent company. And this brand focused on clients who were high net worth, affluent, mass affluent people. And the brokers or the producers who sold the product were all independent. And so one of my jobs was to influence those brokers who could sell anyone's product to make ours their number 1 choice, or maybe their number 2 choice. And I went from there into health insurance, another very, very highly regulated industry. And this is where I think I really sort of distilled down into a niche, if you will, or an area of concentration that I love. And that is making complicated information relatable, accessible, and actionable, regardless of the audience's cognitive ability, their age, and all of the other different attributes we use to sort of separate ourselves from each other. And while I was there, one of my key accomplishments was developing a plain language vocabulary for this company. And this company is at the top of the Fortune 500, the largest commercial health insurer in the United States. In other words, the non-Medicare plans, so under 65, and replaced jargon with plain language. And it was based on research. So the critical part of this, Dan, is you mentioned a minute ago that you see people, they get paid for telling people what they think. I prefer to be paid for telling people what I know. And what I know comes from researching the people that they want to create as customers, retain as customers, and expand business with as customers. And so what I do is I bring evidence-based content, communications, campaign strategy, and execution to businesses of all kinds. My skill set is transferable to any industry. The more difficult the subject, the more effective I can be at communicating with the audience. And I make everything that I do measurable so that the business can see the impact on brand perception, on cost savings, on revenue generation. So measurable, objective, top and bottom line growth, improvement in brand perception, brand loyalty, affinity, and trust, and a dramatic increase in customer satisfaction. And so after that opportunity met its end, I started Dyadic Dynamics, and that's what I've been doing since.
There are three different directions I want to go with this. So I'm gonna
Sure.
go in one direction and then try to remember the other two. I think one of the things that grabs me about your writing, that when I read on LinkedIn or I read other writing, other communication from you, is it's not just that you know what you are wanting to say, but you tend to say it with brevity, with appropriate brevity. Now, sometimes it requires longer communication because there's more information or data, but generally, I don't get bored reading anything from you. And I would contrast that with I've got several online communicators who I love their work. I've been a big fan of their books, a big fan of their LinkedIn posts, a big fan of
Sure.
their whatever. But I've noticed over the last couple of years, I get more impatient with them because it just takes a little long to get to their point, or
Yeah.
sometimes there really isn't a point and you don't know until you've read through 2 pages. There's one in particular where I see his posts now, and I used to read them all the time, and now I see it and I know, oh, that's going to be 10 minutes, or I know that's going to be 8 minutes. It's like and I just don't. Maybe it's my own limitation. I just don't have that patience anymore, and I think that's probably whether it's a thoughtful skill on your part, or just an instinctive skill. You say what you need to say with confidence and brevity and a little smirk. There's always there's this ever so slight smirk that's said but not said, and that just keeps me. Maybe that's because it's my personality that reacts to that, but that interesting combination, I think, really works well, at least for folks like me.
Sure. Well, I think part of it is you're the type of audience that I want to communicate with. And so if it does resonate with you, that's great. So you asked, is it instinctual? Is it a developed thing? It's both. It's both. And, I don't do well at taking compliments. And I also surprisingly don't do well about when it comes to talking about myself, about what I'm really great at. And so I say this with as much humility, I guess, as I can. If everybody has a natural skill or natural affinity or inclination that they're born with, writing is mine. And so from that has come editing and graphic design and desktop publishing. And now we can go into the 1990s and say building websites and social media and things like that. They were all sort of a natural progression from the roots, which is written communication. And so as long as people need to communicate with each other, I feel I will have a place in the world, even though today's job market is about as toxic and terrible as I've ever seen it in my life. And so part of it is, I also, Dan, I like to put myself out there a little bit. If I write something that's inauthentic, okay, purposely inauthentic, to try to gain a particular person as a follower or to impress a certain audience, when they do finally have a one-on-one conversation with me, whether it's private or on a podcast like this, they're going to be disappointed. And so everything I do in life, I try to do with a little smirk. My style is I lead with levity. And if people can't smile and laugh and have fun in the workplace, or a client can't smile and laugh when you're working together, I just don't think you're doing it right. There's enough fear and enough anxiety and panic and worry about things that we can control and can't control in the world, that not having humor to me is criminal. And so I absolutely do put a smirk in things. And it took me years to train myself out of trying to be funny. So if you try to be funny, or you try to be witty, or you try to sound smart, most people are going to catch it. And the other thing, since you are talking about LinkedIn, is that there are fewer and fewer unique voices on there. And what I mean by that is, and this is not to disparage anyone's decisions or profession, believe me, Believe me,
Mhm.
a lot of stuff you see on LinkedIn is either generated in AI because people are busy. Why are they so busy? It could be the short-term gain mentality we talked about a few minutes ago. They're too busy, too occupied, don't have the capacity to sit down and write something authentic. So they will run it through a GPT type of solution. And ultimately, that comes out sounding really homogenous. And that does not work to your advantage, whether you're trying to make friends or secure new clients. Another is that a lot of people have ghostwriters. And I think that this can be a real deal maker for
Mhm.
people if you have a good one. But I do see a lot of ghostwriting, and I can tell when it's a ghostwriter because when you've been doing something for 25 years, you can kind of tell when someone's doing something a certain way. And a lot of the ghostwriters are extremely talented, extraordinarily good writers, but there again, they look at what each other does. They have to.
Yeah.
That's their competition. They want to stay ahead of the curve. And so some of those start to sound the same over time. And so all I do is write with my natural voice, my natural cadence. I don't do the crazy 3 words per line with multiple line breaks in between. There's a lot of criminal stuff happening on LinkedIn that makes it hard for folks like you and me to pay attention to a post that truly could be valuable, that truly could be new or impactful
Yeah.
information. And so what this kind of boils down to, Dan, is that the quantity of content, 99+% of which on LinkedIn or any social media, is disposable. Once it's out of your feed, it's history unless you thought enough of it to save it or share it, which, some people do. It creates message fatigue. You get sick of seeing the same kind of message said the same kind of way over and over and over again. And for a business, never mind an individual on LinkedIn, when a business decides, hey, we're going to communicate with people how we want, when we want, and they have this notion, Dan, that if they don't pack every piece of information into an email, they're not going to have a second chance to get it in front of their audience. The tragic irony of that is they are creating message fatigue when that email requires 25 scrolls with your thumb to get to the bottom. And so when I step in, one of the first things I do is I will audit an organization's content for them and or with them and point out some of these opportunities, especially if they are of the short-term gain, short, quick
Mhm.
win mentality, that they can fix right away, either very inexpensively or for free using the existing technology they have. And we can start there and fix it together, because the fatigue that we are creating as a society, not showing any signs of letting up. So when you mentioned enjoying my posts because there's brevity, it's the right kind of brevity. And it's brevity that I use to express my authentic brand voice, if there is a Ben Rosenfield brand voice, but it's just my voice and it is my tone. And so it's as authentic as I can make it.
I would call you, you are the writer's equivalent, or your writing is the equivalent of a literary amuse-bouche. Do you know that term?
I certainly do.
Okay, so it's just enough to satisfy, just
Mhm.
enough to give you a sense of a meal, but not so much that you ever feel bloated
Right,
or full. Um,
right.
and so that leads me to two more directions. I have to keep. I should take notes so I can remember to come
Sure.
back to all these things. I know a lot of relatively young people who are excellent writers, or they're good raw material where young woman, young man, give
Mhm.
you a decade of real life, and you can blossom, you can bloom into something. And yet many of them are they they feel as if there is no future for their writing skill because of AI, because
Mhm.
of this overwhelm, because of what they perceive to be. And take LinkedIn. If you're a young budding writer and you read 98% of what's on LinkedIn, there's nothing
Mhm.
in your heart that says, "Oh, I want to be part of that. I want to create more of that." So
Mhm.
any since you and I are both of a certain age where we are allowed to give guidance to younger people, any any advice you would give to
Yeah.
someone in her or his 20s? They know they're a good writer.
Mhm.
They know they're a good communicator. They probably know they need more life experience to bring richness and depth,
Sure.
but they feel like there's not going to be something for them even if they develop those skills further.
Yeah.
Any thoughts or guidance?
Oh yeah, plenty. So just off the top of my head, first and foremost, I had the really great fortune of attending a prestigious journalism school when I was in college. And I still to this day have no idea how I got in, but in I got anyway. And on day one, the first thing they told us was know your audience. And that advice was worth the entire undergrad degree in journalism. If you don't know your audience, you cannot communicate effectively. Being a good writer and an effective communicator are not the same thing. And so what you really want to do if you're already a good writer is become a master of the mechanics of the written language. Stop these sentences in all lowercase without punctuation. LinkedIn, Facebook, a blog, those aren't text messages. Okay, you got more than 160 characters that you used to be able to do on Twitter. Talk like an adult. Write like an adult. And I'll tell you why. Because that's not a dig at anyone who does their own thing. I don't care if you want to misspell things on purpose because that's your strategy to get attention. Great. It's not mine, because I view it as purposely creating a credibility gap. If I can't trust you to spell my name right, or I can't trust you to use a period at the end of that sentence, what else are you missing? Because you're obviously not strong at the basics. Okay. Number two is stop writing for other writers. They are not your audience unless you're teaching a writing class, which in your 20s, probably not ready for that just yet. I don't even know if I'm ready for that, and I'm definitely not in my 20s anymore. I still do teach people, but anyway, have fun and be curious and make curiosity fun. The way my brain's wired, which has not always been ideal for me in life, is one of the reasons why you see 3 bookcases full of teapots and 1 or 2 more that you can't see off camera. I am relentlessly curious. And that's why journalism was such a great fit and marketing is such a great fit, because there's an information gathering component to it. So rather than hitting people with your opinion, why not switch it up a little bit and start sharing fact? There's more than enough opinion going around, and that's part of the problem. You used to have to be someone to get published in a newspaper, an opinion piece in a newspaper. Letter to the editor had to either be really, really great or really, really bad enough that the readers would make fun of it. There used to be prestige with being published.
Yeah.
And I don't think it's a bad thing that anyone can pop a website out of a briefcase and have their own blog in a matter of hours. I think that's great. Democratize access to publishing. I'm all for it. I mean, obviously Gutenberg was too. Any kind of technology, be it AI, WordPress, can be used for good, can be used for bad. It's a tool. And so if all you're going to do is put your opinion out there, I would say to you that you're probably not going to be quite as successful as you could, and you're not going to get as much satisfaction out of your writing as you could. If you don't have a passion for learning new stuff and then explaining that new stuff to others, it's difficult to be a writer. Okay? Anybody can type out, the grass is green, the sky is blue, those are my opinions. Okay? Not everybody, though, can talk to a scientist who's going to explain, maybe in PhD level terminology, why the sky is blue and the grass is green, and then be able to distill that down so that anyone, regardless of their age, income, education, or other type of characteristic, can say, you know what, I get that. And I can tell my friends, and hey, you know what, I trust this Ben guy now because he told me factual, actual truth about the color of the sky and the color of the grass in my yard. So those are some starters.
It all makes great sense. I do think also that I can understand the fear of AI, the fear that AI is going to overwhelm the writing function. And as AI gets smarter, better informed, as AI scrapes more of humanity and basically gets more able to mimic human writing, um, it does create a challenge, but I think there's always going to be a place for that uniquely human voice,
Oh,
that
absolutely.
those uniquely human writers, and as they become more rare, they become more noticeable. So
Mm,
you jumped out in a crowd for me. You jump now, um, and I think I'm not unique. I think others will jump out from the LinkedIn crowd or the general communication crowd. But you go to a bookstore and you pick any topic. You know, my topic du jour is leadership. It
mhm,
is it's not something I chose. I think it is something that chose me because
mhm,
um, starting from a young age, my first leadership experience was in the Boy Scouts, and I was given a
sure.
position where I had a small troop of fellow scouts that I was responsible for helping them learn certain things, and then like throughout my life, leadership has been a present topic, has been something that was shared with me from the scouting to the military to
Mhm,
working for organizations like General Electric, where leadership development is a key part of how you grow as a leader there. But I so I thought a lot about leadership, but never. It wasn't really until the last, I would say, 4 years, where I thought that maybe I have something to say. For the most part, I've just been a sponge. I've been observing,
sure.
watching, complaining quite a bit, noticing the dearth of great leadership and the prevalence of really crappy leadership.
Mhm,
And then I had a conversation with someone. It was about a little over 4 years ago, and he asked the question. He said, "Why are there so many crappy leaders? Why? Where's the one that we can all respect? Where are the few, the handful that we? Because there was a time decades ago when, while we might have differences of opinion, there were at least a few global leaders that we could all say, that's someone I can respect. That's somebody I can trust. That's somebody whose
mhm,
competence and their way of being a leader I can align with."
sure.
And I think we're living in a world now where there are leaders who have maybe 40% or 35%, like a rabid enthusiasm from a
Mhm,
small group of people, but there isn't anybody that I can think of that we all broadly respect. And
sure.
so
Yeah.
4.5 years ago, I was certainly not in a place where I felt comfortable saying I have the answers. I'm still not in that place.
Mhm,
Where I feel comfortable right now is that there is a question to be answered. There is a question that's relevant to a lot of us. And
yeah,
like I said before, this podcast is part of that questioning process, that
sure.
searching process. Um, so with young people, I'm assuming, in kind of reading between the lines of what you said, if
Mhm,
someone does have that initial raw talent and the interest, you still feel there's a viable career path. We may not be able to define, and maybe actually this is probably where the uncertainty comes from. You grew up at a time where you could go to J school and you could have a defined career path. You could say, well, I'm going to move up through this track or this track or this
yeah.
track. There were, and if things didn't quite work out, there were other tracks, other paths. I
Mhm,
don't think we have that certainty anymore. It is, you are taking a leap of faith that you have enough to say, or that you will have enough to say, that your voice will find traction somewhere.
mhm.
That's easy. That's easy to say, and I know that's harder for
Right.
young people to take that leap.
I think the younger you are, the more opportunity you have to ensure that you have multiple paths forward. And I think that it starts with understanding what you are naturally, organically inclined to be interested in or passionate about. So when I think about my volunteerism, my business does pro bono work for a food pantry in a neighboring community. They serve about 15% of that community's population every day of the week with food and emergency financial assistance. And that's a passion of mine. You know, you take a look at me and you can probably tell food insecurity has not been
Yeah.
among my challenges in my life. And the fact that we live in a country that is as developed and as sophisticated in such a short time as America has become, that there are people who don't know where a meal is going to come from. To me, it boggles the mind, and it's unacceptable, and it creates physical and emotional discomfort for me. And I'm not the one suffering.
Mm-hmm.
And so I am passionate about helping others. I got that from my parents, and it's something that I've instilled in my own kid. And I believe in helping people. And so the organizations that I work best with are one where there is a component of helping people. And you can look at health insurance, and nobody loves the industry. Nobody. And when you drill down a layer and say, okay, I hate health insurance, and then you get into the brands and you say, well, I hate this brand, I hate that brand. Okay, great. And then you get into, I don't understand how to use the product, but at least it's really expensive. That's a loser all the way down. And I'm able to step in, though, because I am passionate about helping people and bringing that into balance with the business objectives. I am able to do the things like I did at Anthem, now known as Elevance Health, creating the plain language vocabulary, socializing it around the organization, getting buy-in from people because the evidence was there, the data were there, the insights were there that said, hey, if we communicate in this way instead of that way, fewer people are going to call the member services number for help. And each time that phone rings, there's a set cost for that service. We could probably save money. And so I set myself a goal of, I don't know, maybe $8 or $9 million for a calendar year in cost savings. And within 6 months, I was pushing $12 million in cost savings because people are calling less. They're engaging more in self-service. So when you think about what's possible with writing, it's not just communicating about how great our brand is. It's showing how great the brand is by demonstrating in the communications and in the experience the company is deciding to provide for its customers, that they're easy to do business with, that they deserve trust. And so for all the things that health insurance does wrong, there are some things that it occasionally does right. And if you are a writer and a communicator, and you will allow yourself to be just even a little bit curious about how what you are creating, either for yourself, your friends, your customers, your company's customers, if you're interested even just a little in how that impacts the audience, there are all kinds of opportunities you can pull back into the organization, make yourself look great. I got promoted twice in 5 years there in an extremely competitive organization, an extremely high-performing marketing organization in the member engagement space. And I had an audience of 32 million people and infinite opportunities every single day to screw up and really confuse and hurt the audience. Luckily, I didn't do that. And I didn't do that, and I helped others also not to do that by sharing the data and insights and what they mean and what adjustments we can make now, tomorrow, next quarter, next year to keep going along that path. So if you're a writer, don't limit yourself to writing. Expand your skill set to include understanding the impact that your writing has on the business and on the customer, because that way, guess what you can write about then? You can write objectively about the value you bring to the organization and the customer, the results of your work, and you can present those up, and you can do it aggressively. I learned over the years, Dan, that no one is going to tell your story for you. And sadly, very, very sadly, good work does not speak for itself.
Without
so if you concentrate on more than just writing, and you concentrate a little bit on sort of marketing yourself and marketing the results of your writing, AI is not going to do that.
If you can learn to tell the truth in a compelling manner, succinctly, in a way that grabs people, that's a skill that's going to become more and more valuable. But learning to tell the truth, because what corporate America will do, if we're going to be honest, corporate America will want to tell a compelling story, but they will want to kind of shave the edges. They won't want to address the downsides. They won't want to address the negative. We want to let's accent our benefits. and then let's describe our benefits. Let's romance our benefits. Let's sell the sizzle, not the steak. After a while, if it becomes all sizzle and there is no steak,
That's right.
that like anybody can tell a compelling lie. I mean, I can lie and make up great stories, and we have a
Sure.
lot of politicians, a lot of leaders, a lot of people who blast out really grabby things that have little or no connection with the truth. I'm old enough to remember I think it was either late 70s or early 80s. I think it was late 70s when it was revealed that the president of the United States told a lie. And it was a shocker. It was seriously. And then there were news reports like deconstructing the lie, like told an untruth. It was a surprise.
Yeah.
The only way you'd have that impact today is if it was suddenly revealed that the president of the United States told a hard truth. Then it might be a shocker. Like, oh my God, let's deconstruct how he told a hard truth. And this is not dumping on Trump. This is endemic to every.
Yes, absolutely. It's bigger than him.
And so if you can know truth, tell truth in a compelling and succinct way. Now you can tell AI to do it. You can tell AI, hey, give me a 3-sentence summary of the benefits of this product, and review these 3 product information sheets. AI will scrape that content, and it will present back to you a serviceable result that most of your corporate colleagues will go, yeah, that's good enough. Yeah, that's adequate. Yeah, that does it. That compresses the benefits into 3 sentences. But you're the one who will know that's not quite it. That's just part of the massive communication. I agree with you. There's going to be still a place, but that does require learned skill as well as natural capability. And I guess along with you, I would encourage younger people to pursue that if it's a natural emphasis for them.
Absolutely. And you have to be willing. You have to there's a duality that you kind of have to accept. And that is, you have to be firm and steadfast with certain things, and you have to be able to be flexible with certain things. And whatever those things are completely up to you. We're all different. I don't care. I don't judge. The only ones that I can control are my own. And so, without getting into too much specifics, I'll tell you a quick story about why this is important. When I was younger, I refused to buy products made in a certain country because of certain things that happened in history. Okay. And that's, as a younger person, I had that luxury. As I got older, had a career, had a 401k, I remember looking at my 401k and saying, oh gosh, there are some companies from that one country that I don't want to do business with in my portfolio. And oh man, there are some American companies in that portfolio that use products that are made in that country, whatever. So I thought to myself, what are the odds that if I were to call this massive national financial services and investments company and told them how I felt, that they would go ahead and just cherry pick all of those stocks out of my retirement plan. So what I'm talking about there, Dan, is what some would call ideological consistency. And I know that type of mindset is important to people, especially millennials and younger. But the problem is that it leads to a kind of inflexibility that I can sum up this way. I win, you lose. You lose so that I can win. Or I cannot win unless you lose. I cannot be right unless you are wrong. So it's a zero-sum game that you are playing with all kinds of decisions in your life, and some that can affect other people as well. And I think that's a big problem. So there are things that you need to stick to. And I can tell you, years ago, I applied for a position, and it was internal communications at a major telecom organization. And I was talking to the vice president, and he just kind of asked me, you can do all of these things. What can't you do? And I think he maybe meant that in terms of skill set, but what I told
Uh-huh.
him was the truth. I said, I can't lie. I cannot lie to an audience for you or for the company. And so if that is the kind of thing that you're going to ask of me, I don't think it's going to work out. And, I didn't get that job. And could it have been because of what I said? Absolutely. Could it have been because I talk too much? Sure. Or I'm loud? Sure. But I think it was probably because of that answer. It is unfair to people to lie to them. And in the workplace where you are expecting, at the end of the day, nothing but productivity from people, regardless of their title, rank, or status. CEOs have people to report to as well.
Mm-hmm.
Everyone has a boss, and they want productivity from you. If you're being lied to, when you talked about, finding out years ago the president lied and things like that, when people find out in the workplace that they are being lied to, that they are being willfully misled, talk about morale, you talk about productivity. And if you're a short-term gain kind of person, well, those just went out the window. And then you start losing people. So now you're impacting your long-term value play as well, if you even have one.
And I think, as we're getting to the nub of something so important, because it is possible. I mean, I know a lot of great, let me back up, not great leaders. I know a lot of leaders who've been very successful with the theater of leadership. They have been very successful telling stories. They have been very successful being a cheerleader, being the rah person. I mean, we also know great leaders who've been successful just being blatant liars. Yesterday I was reading that Forbes has a list of 30 under 30 that they publish each year. The list of individuals who appeared in the Forbes 30 under 30 list who have been indicted and convicted and have gone to prison is a very, very long list. And what that tells us is you can be a leader and a liar, and it can work. But I think the world we're living in is eventually going to put a high premium on that rare leader who I can count on to tell me the truth. Sometimes it's a hard truth. Sometimes it's an easy truth, but will tell me the truth that I can count on, not to just lead me down the primrose lane. And I think it's becoming more rare, particularly when we get into tough economic times. I will say I have fallen sometimes into the trap of, okay, I need to keep my team motivated, but there are drum beats in the distance. And I don't want to emphasize that too much, because that's not good. And I have fallen into the trap of trying to be the cheerleader. Hey, ignore the drum beats, ignore what you're seeing there, or I minimize what's seeing there. When in fact, the reality is, I have as much anxiety as they do, and I don't think that's the path toward effective leadership in the future. I think the path toward effective leadership is embrace the brutal reality. That doesn't mean you have to be nothing but a naysayer or nothing but a gloom and doomer,
right?
But you have to confront it and be known as the kind of leader who says what is, and then has a vision for, well, what do we do with this? So, like, you and I are not going to pretend that AI, number one, isn't incredibly powerful, and can't have some really good uses in the modern work environment. We don't have to back away from the tough truth to also create a vision for how can you navigate your career around and through, and potentially even leveraging, even with AI. It doesn't have to be one or the other, but that's more of a nuanced message, and there's a particular skill set that I think hopefully more and more leaders will develop. But I've got a real ear for cheerleaders, and when I start hearing too much happy talk from a leader, my radar starts to go off, and then I just start discounting what they're saying, and I think it's even more true with younger generations. And I hate to label, so I'm sorry if you're watching this. I'm going to label Gen Z. Gen Z is so cynical. Because Gen Z has been lied to so many times. Gen Z knows both sides of the story. Gen Z knows about income disparity. Gen Z knows that CEOs are making 600 times, what the lowest paid worker is making. Gen Z has been exposed to all of these difficult facts in their most formative years.
Certainly.
And I remember back when my formative years, I was indoctrinated. I wasn't exposed to difficult facts. I was given comfortable facts. And so I felt internally like the system worked. And if I just worked hard enough, if I just kept my nose to the grindstone, if I just did good work, the results would come. You and I know that that's not true.
Right.
And so I pre-forgive my Gen Z colleagues for being cynical. I pre-forgive them for not being great followers. They don't salute. They do not say, hey, tell me what my OKRs are for the next quarter, and I'll go make it happen.
Sure.
They want to discuss and debate, and they want to be part of that dialogue, and they are hard. Hard is the wrong word. They are different to lead. And then I will also say it's not just Gen Z. It's becoming all workers are different to lead because we're all being exposed to a lot of this.
I think that.
Go ahead.
Okay. I think part of what you're pointing to is the discipline of organizational communication. And, I firmly believe that for a workplace to be wholesome and effective, there is a degree of filtering that needs to happen. So I've been looped into email back and forths that have involved C-suite executives before, and I've noticed how they sometimes talk to each other, and you could label it as profane or flippant or, brevity to the point of being curt with each other. And that's not supposed to trickle down to the unwashed. Okay. And so when you talk about, the showmanship of leadership, that's what you're talking about. But I think that there's an even more insidious element that I would love to see done away with. And, you had mentioned that leadership kind of found you. And I would say the same about myself, in that it wasn't until later in my career that I stumbled into having a mentor. At the life insurance company where I worked, it was a Fortune 500 organization. The vice president of marketing services was my manager. And on day one, he brought me into his office and said, one of the reasons that I hired you is that there's nothing I really need to teach you about marketing, communications, marketing technology, things like that. So why don't we talk about the people skills, the soft skills, the stuff that we haven't discovered together yet. And let's see what kind of goodness we can cultivate there. And in the few years that I was with him, I learned more than in my entire career. And he gave generously, was protective to the extent that, when lessons were learned, they were learned, but he never treated me poorly because something went sideways. So all that is to say that he was a model for me. And this is a buzz term that I dislike because the meaning is ambiguous, but he was an example of what people now will call psychological safety in the workplace.
Yeah.
So this is a guy who, older fella. I know better than to say how old I think he was or is, because we still talk, and he may actually watch this because, his former protege, if you will, is in it. But my point is, he was a gentleman. And so business discourse, the profanity was left out. Now, personally, do I think it's a big deal? No. Did he? No. But he insisted on having a wholesome work environment.
Mm-hmm.
And so what he was great at, and what I have really dedicated myself to since then, is showing and not telling. And so, Dan, when I have applied for jobs, and, while I run Dyadic Dynamics, if there is a full-time opportunity in an industry that I'm passionate about, an organization that I feel is aligned with what I'm looking for, I have no hesitation to apply and have the discussion with them. But what I'm tired of hearing And I think what a lot of job seekers, of which there are more now probably than ever, what they are also tired of hearing, if their LinkedIn posts are any indication, is the performative crap. So when an organizational leader, and I'm saying by title only, I'm not talking about a true leader, I'm just saying someone's got a cool title. When they say, I want to hire someone smarter than me who's going to come in and tell me what we should be doing, I have never, ever seen that play out and be true. When companies talk too much about how great their culture is and how much they want to protect it at all costs, I have yet to join an organization or talk to a colleague, a friend who's joined one that was all about its culture, that actually had that culture. One former colleague of mine told me at his new role, the company is so good, they don't talk about culture. They don't have town halls about their culture. They don't have web pages and thought leadership blog posts and promoted posts on LinkedIn talking about their people first culture. They just go ahead and do it. That's what's real. People don't want to hire people smarter than them because they have fragile egos and they feel threatened by those people. So that is absolute lip service to try to draw in talent. The more an organization says we want change and we want people smarter than us, consider the inverse to be true. Prove me wrong. I would love for an organization to reach out to me right after this podcast and say, you know what, you're wrong. And here's how we roll here. Want to try? Sure. Sure, I do. I'd love to. It just doesn't happen. And that's the performative crap side of leadership that is as toxic as the boss who screams and yells and curses and is racist or whatever. It's a different
kind
of bad.
It's probably a bit more so because the performative boss opens you up. Whereas the screamer, you sort of naturally protect yourself. You recognize that person is being an ass. Whereas the performative boss who says, this is as much about you as it is about us. We're a family here. We are loyal and we want loyalty in return. I'm not saying that those things are bad. Of course they're good. If true, those things are good. I was last week. I was at a meeting. I was sitting around a table at a conference with a bunch of senior leaders of businesses. We were discussing culture and AI, and every one of these senior leaders was saying lots and lots of wonderful things about the emphasis on culture, what they want, and how can we leverage AI to enhance our culture. And so then I said to them, I had this moment where I thought, well, let me just try telling the truth. We'll see. And I said, well, here's my approach to leveraging AI. I do leverage AI because it does boost my productivity. I give half of that productivity boost to my company, and I keep the other half. So if I can do 6 hours of work in 4 hours, I'm not just going to take the extra 2 hours and keep working just as hard, because all that does is that creates compression where, well, now I'm leveraging AI and I'm just pushing, driving more. So I consciously say, all right, I am more productive now. I'm going to give you half and I'm going to keep half for myself. And one of the gentlemen at the table said, well, what are you going to do with that half? And I said, well, frankly, it's nobody's business. I might take a nap. I might go for a walk. I might work on a side project. It's mine. It is mine.
Yeah.
And I was purposefully being just a little whatever. And I was watching the reaction. There was not enthusiasm at that table. The idea that, well, AI could help them have more time. They're all for AI can help them do more. But if I'm going to pay them for 8 hours of work, I want 8 hours of work. But do you really? Because you don't really want 8 hours. You want the output. You want the quality output from that. So I completely agree with you. There is a lot of work to be done with leaders to help them become more comfortable being truly human-centered leaders. And I want to be respectful of your time. So I like the idea of kind of ending where we started. So for those of you who are still with us, the whole reason Ben Rosenfield grabbed me was because he seems so human. He seems so real. And I think there's something there, something within this conversation. Each of you may take away different thoughts, different lessons, but as we explore these kinds of things further, I think we're moving in the direction of figuring out what does the new leader of 2026, 7, 8, what at some point in the future, what does that new leader look like? And I can guarantee you it looks different than pre-pandemic leadership. I don't know exactly how, but I know that it looks different. Any final thoughts you would like to share with us, Ben?
Just want to remind everybody to know your audience and to treat each other better than you expect to be treated yourself.
So the next time we connect, I'm going to ask you about the teapots. Obviously,
Sure.
you're a lover of tea and teapots, and I know because you shared this with me before that there are particular stories behind some of those teapots, and I
Yeah.
think it would be cool to hear at least one of those stories. So thank you for this. This has been fantastic. Thank you, and we'll talk again soon.
Thank you, Dan. It's a pleasure.